It's all been leading to this. Everything I've done, every video we've built, the mission to Oregon.
Oh, fuck. I don't think so, man. Oh, boy, I don't want to move.
I'm sorry, Bryant. I can't. Jay backed out. I lost my Jeep. I can't come. You know, I'd love to go out there and experience it, but this year just isn't gonna happen. But what if I do it anyway? So the parental unit decided to sell the house. We're moving to Florida. Here's the problem. Since adults in life have everything figured out and know exactly what they're doing, we have to move out by September 9th, but can't move into the new place until September 29th. If my math is correct, that gives me 20 days of being homeless, which is a pretty interesting feeling. Now, here's the thing. I could drive down south and stay with the grandparents for 20 days, wasting my time playing Minecraft, or I could make a quick little detour over to Oregon and say hi to good old Bryant. You know, the guy who basically made the manual swap video. To put a manual transmission in an automatic car is not easy, especially when there's literally no information out there about it. Bryant over here in Oregon State saw through these obstacles, and where I had considered the idea, he was actually doing it. So I dug up my old research and we conglomerated ideas. Turns out he's got this sick Cherokee called the XJ and an Instagram page you can follow him on. Fast forward and we both have our manual swap Jeeps, and by that time became good chums. I'm no stranger to befriending random people on the internet. I mean, half my friends live in Illinois as it is, and it was always a momentous occasion to finally meet the real person behind the Xbox party face to face. So I talked to Brian about going out west to visit him, and at some point Jay got involved, and there was this plan for me and Jay to go to Oregon and meet Brian and explore a bit of Oregon because it's an incredible place. We called this Operation Flex, because Oregon is pretty much the peak of vacationing in the US, and, well, you know, the XJ. By the way, I know I'm not saying it right. I know it's pronounced Oregon. I have no excuse or justification. I just think it's funny when people cannot take me seriously when I say it wrong. But anyway, unfortunately, Jay had to go be a responsible contributing member of society and have a job and a kid. Well, that's lame. I guess Jay can't come with. Now, I have a habit of randomly showing up places completely unannounced due to my secret ability to teleport, and figured going thousands of miles completely undercover wouldn't be out of the question. Now, Bryant, of course, having only known me for like a year, would not be expecting me to randomly show up at all, whatsoever. It was perfect. I renamed it Operation SecretFlex because as far as Bryant knows, I'm just on a typical road trip to Florida. So our secret mission objectives are as follows. Visit Mount Rushmore in South Dakota, stealthily show up unannounced at Bryant's house, stand in the Pacific Ocean, visit the last Blockbuster, rendezvous with Nick in Utah, drive through Monument Valley, and finally get to Florida. So, on September 7th, Operation SecretFlex. Mission start. I'll point out real quick also that at no point was I planning on making a video about this, mostly due to the fact that I've been incredibly stressed out with the overbearing weight and hopelessness of modern society and the heart-stopping realization that I'm going nowhere in life at record speeds. So, I don't have much video footage, I mostly just took pictures, but where there's a story to be told, someone always wants to hear it. The trip started in La Crosse. Cam and his wife, who are all about that travel life, so they were interested in buying an RV. As it happens, the RV in question was on my route, so I met them there on day one to check it out. It was a 1987 Econoline with a 7.5-liter V8, and despite being so old, it was in incredible condition with only 57,000 miles on it. So all was good, and they decided to buy it. Meanwhile, we were waiting for Jay to get off work, so I took the two of them to a lookout spot just across the Mississippi River. From here, standing in Minnesota, you can see the entire La Crosse metro area, which is pretty freaking cool. Eventually, Jay left work, and we took his girlfriend's dad's old CJ out for a ride.
I can't fucking hear you over this 304 cubic inches of freedom!
I very briefly took it on the freeway, and while going 10 over the speed limit, we flew past a cop who immediately pulled out and turned his lights on. Oh shit. But there was a van pulling a trailer just ahead of us, and one of his taillights was out. The cop passed us and went after the guy with the taillight out. Bathtub on the interstate with 4 irresponsible young adults speeding? Nah. Van with a burnt-out taillight? Arrest him!
Stop! You violated the...
So that night, I stayed on Jay's couch and set off the next morning at noon 30. I didn't do anything in Minnesota, I've been there plenty of times, but Interstate 90 runs pretty close to the tri-point between Iowa and South Dakota, so I decided to stop there and check out the survey marker. I had never been to South Dakota before, so this tri-point survey marker marks the first time I've set foot here. You guys know how I am with survey markers, bro. I stopped in Sioux Falls for a nap, and oh yeah, by the way, my sleep schedule is basically just not. So I just kind of drive until I'm tired and then sleep for a few hours and start driving again. Anyway, Sioux Falls is pretty cool. It's a very spread out city. I thought that was interesting. I drove through the plains at night and started making songs for Jacob's rap career because he doesn't seem to want to.
The scar on my body came from one of my enemies. All the haters gonna know I got a life of amenities, cause the women come around me for a cure or a remedy from the shit you put her through to hide your own insecurity.
By the time I got to Rapid City, it was daytime, so I drove south to Mount Rushmore, and first off, I was not expecting this to be like an actual park. Like, there's a whole tourist shop and parking garage and hiking trail, and I don't know, I thought it was just like a gravel pull-off on the side of the road. So I walked around the trail, it was pretty cool, a lot of stairs. It was kind of drowsy and rainy the whole time, but definitely still very cool to see Mount Rushmore up close. I don't really know anything about it, it's just, it's just one of those places you have to go, They had a row of every state and U.S. territory with a placard and their flag. Wisconsin, starting with a W, was the only one that had a blank space next to it. So, I guess the U.S. plans on adding a new state that starts with something specifically between Wisconsin and Wyoming alphabetically. Insider news, now you know. You heard it here first, folks. Selfie with Texas, stealth picture of Oregon, and apparently the monument is a First Amendment area, which is kind of concerning, actually, because I thought the whole country was a First Amendment area. I thought, that's how constitutional amendments work, but apparently not, so watch what you say. Unless you're at Mount Rushmore, then you can say whatever the fuck you want. Another interesting little thing is this complimentary air pump at the exit of the parking garage. Seemed kind of odd, but, I took the free air. I happened to cross this trail, and now here's the perfect time to remind everyone that this Jeep is two-wheel drive. At this point, I have a front axle in it, but there's no transfer case, so I only got the back wheels. Out west, there are a ton of trails and dirt roads like this that you really should have four-wheel drive for, and I wish I had four-wheel drive, but it was either that or I go on this trip. I couldn't do both. So although many times, as you will see, I was very tempted to go down random unmarked trails like this, I often mustered up the willpower to deny myself in case I'd get stuck out there. On my way over to Wyoming, I convoyed with this old Wagoneer for a while. It's so refreshing to see old cars like this all over the place where rust isn't a problem. I shit you not, I have literally never seen a Wagoneer driving on roads in Wisconsin. This is literally the first one I've seen out and about. Very cool. And far on the western edge of South Dakota was this. It's kind of hard to see at this angle, but that's an open range in an open range. I thought it was so funny I had to turn around on the highway just to get a picture of it. Gillette is where an old high school legend named Nick lived for a while. There was at one point a plan to pick him up here, go to Oregon, and drop him off on the way back to Wisconsin, but he ended up moving to Salt Lake City, so I just took this picture and sent it to him. I will still meet up with Nick later in this trip. Good to see an old friend from days gone. Now, Wyoming is such a beautifully desolate place. This picture was taken on Interstate 90. Yes, Interstate 90. The road that goes from Seattle to Boston, through Chicago, the Dells, all that. That very same densely packed interstate was utterly silent here in Wyoming. It was incredible. And I had to follow that road all the way to Washington State. I think 595 miles before a turn is the longest I've ever seen Google Maps display. This was Montana. I'd never been to Montana either. I was on a mountain heading downhill, and the fog here was just 100% opaque. You can see this whole blanket below this exact elevation. It was so cool to be on top of that and then drive into it. I found a rest stop and took a short nap somewhere in Montana. I don't know. There's a lot of nothing out here. Really, the only big city I went through was Butte. It was also here, though, that I drove over the Continental Divide. I didn't get a picture of it, unfortunately, because it kind of came out of nowhere. But the Jeep made it to the crest of the Rocky Mountains without ever downshifting to 4th, with all of my shit loaded in the back. Hell yeah, bro. Now, I should have stopped here, because this was unbelievable. This was the first time I'd seen Idaho with my own eyes. Holy Christ, what an entrance. I had spent like the last hour driving uphill. And then suddenly, the cramped mountain passes open up to this incomprehensibly huge valley. And that's the Idaho border. I had to stop here, and I found a pull-off with, you guessed it, a mysterious unmarked gravel trail. Dude, I'm just down here in the middle of nowhere. I found this trail. And I really want to drive down it, but it is super steep. I don't want to risk it without four-wheel drive. Of course, you know, the video doesn't do it justice. I just crossed over to the border to Idaho. It's my first time being in Pacific time. I want to know what's down there so bad, but this was just like this random trail that was off on the side of the interstate. There was no markings or anything, and I just had to come walk down here and scope it out. They say 90% of the time you get stuck off-road, it could have been avoided had you walked the trail first. So, you know, check it out on foot before you try to drive on it. And I think this is too steep and too gravelly for a two-wheel drive Jeep. But I am definitely coming back here when I get four-wheel drive. Northern Idaho is underrated. It is just breathtaking up there. The way the road weaves through the mountain valleys. I stopped that night in a place called Coeur de something. I don't know, but just over 2 hours away from Canada. This marked the farthest north I went during this trip. The boys wanted everyone to get online, but the hotel's internet blocks game consoles because they take up all the bandwidth, so I just took some time alone with Skyrim waifu, and the next day was the day. From here, I'd go south through Washington and across the top edge of Oregon, hopefully find Bryant somewhere and see what happens. Now, Washington State is honestly pretty bland and surprisingly boring, at least the eastern half where I was. Just a bunch of rolling fields, really nothing of interest out there. It was also at this point you might notice all that smog from the wildfires. Yeah, it's kind of like a major problem out west, and September is peak season for the fires. That haze doesn't ever make it out to Wisconsin. It always seems to stop in Minnesota, but we do get those really deep red sunsets whenever the West Coast is on fire. Anyway, I had made it to Oregon. Driving down the Columbia River Valley was yet another beautiful experience. I got to Portland, located Bryant's house by finding his address from a months-old throwaway picture in Messenger, and waited. However, his Jeep wasn't there, so I figured he was at work. Next problem, I don't know exactly where he works. So, I tricked him into opening Snapchat so it would update his location on the Snap Map. By the way, right, this whole time, I have been selling him on my apparent trip to Florida, giving him false updates like, yeah, I'm in Illinois still. And I had turned on ghost mode before I left, so he is completely unaware that I am in Portland right now. Anyway, he opens Snapchat, it updates his location, so I head over there to scour the parking lot for his Jeep, and sure enough, there it is, the FlexJ in all its glory. I have no idea when he gets off work, so for a while I just sat here thinking what to do. I could hide in a bush nearby and wait for him to come out, see my Jeep, undoubtedly send me a picture of it, and reply with a picture of him taking a picture of it. But I figured, man, the store closes in 4 hours, I don't want to sit in a bush that long, so I walked inside. Now, all I know about this store is that Bryant works in the meat department. So I walk in the door and two guys stop me at the front trying to sell me a phone plan for AT&T. He's showing me a map of Oregon, it's all shaded in, he's like, look at all these areas our brand covers, and I'm like, oh, I don't even know where that is. I'm not from here. Oh, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Wisconsin. I'm actually on my way to Florida and figured I'd make a quick little detour over to Portland. And these two guys look at each other and go, that's like a pretty big detour. Do you know what a detour is? So we talked for a little while. Turns out one guy was from Minnesota. The other guy was from Louisiana. They both immediately gave me shit for pronouncing Oregon incorrectly. Anyway, I told them my epic plan to randomly show up unannounced at this guy's workplace. They loved the idea and pointed me to the meat department. So, in the back corner of the store, there it is. There's 3 employees. I can't tell which one is Bryant. There's 2 guys in white shirts and 1 guy in a gray shirt. The best I can tell, based on like the 3 pictures I've seen of Bryant, he's probably the one in the gray shirt. So I wait until the guy in the gray shirt goes to the back room and approach the 2 white shirt guys. My plan is to tell them to tell Bryant some weird guy named Wayman is looking for him and watch him be blatantly confused. But, plot twist, Bryant is one of the white shirt guys. I walk up and say, "Hey." He turns to me, a customer at this point, and goes, "Hey, what can I help you?" So I kept a straight face for as long as I could. After like 15 seconds of this, I go, "What, do you recognize me from somewhere?" Man, the look on his face alone was worth the 30-something whatever hours of driving. Priceless. I will never top that in my life. He was fully convinced I was in Florida, on the opposite end of the entire country. He tells me that was the absolute last thing he expected. It took him like the rest of the day to wrap his head around the fact that I was there and like real. It was pretty cool. Later, when he got off work, Brian gave me a tour of the city, and Portland is beautiful. They have a cripplingly terrible homeless problem, yeah. But I've been to a handful of other big cities. I think of St. Louis, Kansas City, Dallas, Fort Worth, Chicago, Miami, Atlanta, Milwaukee, Cincinnati. And they're all just filthy. They're littered with actual trash, abandoned buildings, way too many people, way too much traffic, terrible, terrible roads. And everyone's an asshole. Like, literally the one time I was in Miami, I drove, I think, 2 miles from my hotel to Sonic. And in that 15 minutes, I almost got shot 3 times. 3 times. And I wasn't even downtown. But Portland is just its own entity. Where other cities become Gotham at night, Portland is lit up not by cop cars, but by bridges. Yeah, crime is a problem, don't get me wrong. But it was a different place next to all the other cookie cutter cities I've been to. So we went across this drawbridge. That was pretty cool. The next day, me and Brian hung out in his driveway and did an oil change on my Jeep. I needed gas, though. And see, you can't pump your own gas in Oregon. That is not a joke. That is an actual state law that you will face criminal penalties for violating. Now, obviously, I've always pumped my own gas, but I had to get the true immersive Oregon experience. So Bryant made me go to a gas station, and yeah, it's legit. There's an attendant at the pump. You pull up and tell them what gas you want, how much, and give them your card, and they do everything else. You just sit in your car the whole time. It's honestly kind of nice. I imagine that'd be really nice in the winter. Bryant had to work that day, so my plan was to go out to Astoria and see the Pacific Coast, returning to Portland for the night. But on our way back to his place from the gas station, disaster struck. The check engine light came on. So we scanned the computer to find a meaningless idle code, probably a small vacuum leak or a bad IAC. Either way, I just deleted the code and forgot about it because this is a Jeep and that's how you fix problems on Jeeps. So off to Astoria, and you might be thinking, Wayman, who the hell is Astoria? Why are you going there and not, I don't know, the pine forests? Well, Mr. First and Only Viewer, Astoria is where the Oregon Film Museum is, and if you've ever seen The Goonies, the county jail houses the very Jeep Cherokee they used in filming. Definitely epic to see this iconic 1985... Wait a minute, that's an automatic. The one in the movie was a 5-speed. This one has an automatic. What the hell? Enhanced frame, 200%. I know you can't see it in this picture, but the selector bezel listed PRND32. That means it's a 4-speed automatic. And the Cherokee didn't have a 4-speed automatic until 1987. Where's the 2.8-liter badge? What are these aftermarket control arms? This isn't the Goonies Jeep, this is a stunt double. So yes, although it is a very impressively close replica, it is not the one they used in the film, as that one was a 1985 2.8-liter 5-speed, and this one, by confirmation of the VIN number, is a 1987 4-liter automatic. Whoever did this replica, though, clearly knows their Cherokees, as they have a 10-slot grill and an authentic pre-88 gauge cluster, two things I highly doubt the average moviegoer could spot out of place. Astoria is also cool because it's the last town on the coast of the Columbia River, and not too far west is Fort Stevens, a national park right on the northwesternmost tip of Oregon. So, here I was, at the very edge of the map, the Pacific Ocean. This is surreal. This ain't nothing like the Florida coast. Aside from the smell, it smells like Florida. Salt and seagulls, beach chickens. The sand has got a sparkle to it. I'm sure the camera doesn't pick up anything noteworthy. But it's so untouched. I don't even leave footprints. And I had to climb down that 30-foot high rock wall to get here. I'm probably not supposed to be here, but the closest human being is miles away. Incredible. The water is so clear. Incredible. And that smog down there, that's smoke from wildfires. The state's on fire again, you know. I can't believe there's just nobody out here though. Feels like a void. The ground is so perfectly, finely flat. It's like Davy Jones's locker if it weren't for all these beach chickens. Also here at Fort Stevens is like an actual, genuine, real shipwreck. I don't know anything about it other than it was awesome to see in person. I also found this epic liberty from British Columbia, and from here I went south along the coast to some rock. I don't remember what it's called, but there's this big rock, okay? And it's cool for some reason, I guess. As I watched the sunset over the Pacific Ocean, peace and accomplishment filled the air. I witnessed some people get married, saw some buff beach chickens, and watched this water do some really cool erosion in the sand for a little while. This is what it feels like to be free. I may not have my life planned out, I may not have a job or money, someone to love me at night, or any real reason to get any of those things. But I do got a Jeep, and we go incredible places. The next day I went on a loop east of Portland, first driving on the historic Route 30, which is Oregon's version of Route 66. That led me to this fancy lookout tower thing. I don't know what it's supposed to be, but they call it the Vista House. It had an amazing view of the Columbia Valley, and there was a lot of people around, many on bikes. I had to drive through all of them to park here and get this picture as they all stared at me in disapproval. Damn tourists. Here's a few shots of Highway 30, including this one, which if you look closely you might notice has motion blur. I'm pretty proud of this shot. Highway 30 led me to Multnomah Falls, a pretty famous waterfall with a big fancy bridge in front of it. I didn't get a chance to stop here though, because that's where every single other tourist was, and I couldn't find a parking space. Oh well, because just 5 minutes down the road was a second waterfall nobody knew about, arguably way better than the first one because it had 20% the amount of swarming human beings crowded around. Horsetail Falls had a mile-long hiking trail up the side of the mountain, so for once in my life I did some physical activity. The trail led me here to this epic shot which Cam quoted playing Skyrim in real life. Yeah. Hell yeah. Oregon is awesome. This is incredible. I got no words. People just live here? Up in the mountain was a second, smaller waterfall with a cool cave behind it. You know in video games how they always hide something behind the waterfall? Well, this is that, but in real life. Let's see, there was also this random tunnel, which was cool. Some really neat old bridges. There's just so much. Just so much. You can't capture it all with one picture. Man, you just gotta be here. From here I drove south to Mount Hood, which I thought was just going to be some lone mountain. It turned out to be a dormant volcano. This gray dust on the ground is actual volcanic ash. I was reading a placard nearby, so how this happens is when the snow on the top of the mountain melts, that running water erodes the built-up ash, and it washes it down the sides of the mountain, creating these ash rivers, if you will. This bridge down here was seriously like the most reinforced bridge I've ever seen. It had been rebuilt like 17 times in the past 100 years because it keeps getting washed out from the torrential terrain changes. Man, that was pretty epic. From here, I actually drove up the mountain a little ways. You can only drive about halfway up it, but the top is still accessible by ski lifts. Yeah, you can actually just ski down the whole thing. It's like 14,000 something feet above sea level. That's some epic skiing right there. So this place was called Timberline Lodge. It's a really fancy, expensive, uppity resort, and at the front entrance there was a sign that said you can't go inside without showing your permit, like your entry ticket or whatever. There was some girl at a stand checking over this family's tickets, and so I just walked in like I own the place, and nobody said anything. There were a lot of unmarked trails here on the side of the mountain, but these ones seemed tame enough to explore, so I went down one to get this epic shot. And on my way down the mountain, the sun set over the smoke from the wildfires in the distance. I also learned a new trick. I've got a new trick up my sleeve. So when you're just letting your engine brake, yeah, you can just shut it off. And the engine will still continue to spin at that same RPM because the wheels are driving it. And then, you know, when you're done doing novelty things, just turn the key back on and it's running. I love this thing. I probably haven't emphasized it enough, but Oregon is amazing. I made this map to demonstrate that fact. Nothing but an absolute blast so far. So one of Brian's friends who manages a car wash is in the preparation stages of doing a manual swap. He loves Cherokees probably as much as I do, except this dude actually knows what's up, and his is the most built Jeep I've ever seen. I pulled into the car wash, he stands out from the crowd immediately by going, "Oh shit! Manual 2-door!" So this absolute Chad gave me a free car wash, very much needed after 700 miles of interstate, pretty much fully encasing the Jeep with bugs and road debris. And after that, I just kind of took it easy for a day. I just sat in the parking lot and wrote in my notebook, you know, brainstormed some video ideas. The next day was Brian's first day off work, and he needed to replace his fuel pump after the check valve failed, so I had the honor of working on the FlexJ. We got the tank out, went to AutoZone for a warranty replacement fuel pump, and got the tank back in. The FlexJ was back to nominal operating status, and then we cruised around for a while. I got to drive the thing. That was pretty epic. Brian drove the Redeemer while I played his theme song. But alas, I had a long way to go. Being pretty much on the opposite corner of the country from my destination, I embarked across central Oregon towards my next stop. On the way, I got alarmingly close to some wildfires. Most of them were mostly contained, though. But here I was. Bend, Oregon is home to the last Blockbuster video rental store in the world. And hell yes, this is the real deal. Blockbuster in all its glory, with the thousands of movies from 50 years ago to today. The candy boxes, the pinball machine, and the smell. Yeah, it still has that unmistakable video rental store smell. Goddamn, Blockbuster was without a doubt the best part of the whole trip. I even saw this matching yellow TJ with Nevada plates on it, so I got a hotel room in Bend that night and rented Footloose and Beverly Hills Chihuahua, proceeded to watch both of them, and in the morning got to perform the honorary Dropbox return. From Bend, I went east to Idaho, south to Nevada, just so I could say I've been there, and then east across Interstate 80 to Utah. Now, Nevada has a ton of casinos, not just in Vegas, like literally everywhere. I was not expecting that, but yeah, you don't need to go anywhere near Vegas to find casinos. There's casinos in gas stations, casinos at McDonald's, casinos across the Utah border. I had stopped in a small town called West Wendover, and despite being in Nevada, which is entirely in the Pacific time zone, this one specific town is actually in Mountain Time. One of my objectives in Utah was to drive on the Bonneville Salt Flats. There's this huge, perfectly flat, dry field of salt, like table salt, that you can drive on, and there's no speed limit. It's not too far off Interstate 80. But on my way out there, of course, I spotted a gravel road and got distracted. That took me up the side of a mountain to a fairly deserted campground. I found this journal left by travelers for travelers and wrote my own quick little entry in it, and then started wandering around the mountain trails with my Bluetooth four-wheel drive. I made it probably about halfway up the mountain before I came upon a steep, sharp turn right on a cliffside that I probably could have made with a running start, but I didn't want to risk it. My back wheels lost traction, and I couldn't get any higher than this. I'll have to come back when I have four-wheel drive. But anyway, I drove out to the Salt Flats, and you might notice it's raining. Yeah, rain in Utah, I know. And because it was raining, they didn't let anyone onto the salt, because it turns into this mush that you just cannot drive through. It don't matter what kind of car you got, you cannot drive through wet salt. So that sucked, but I did get to see it, and after the rain passed, this epic rainbow came out. So instead of continuing, I went back into the mountains nearby and found a much easier trail to drive up. I ended up on this plateau above the hills, and man, it was utterly silent up there. It felt surreal. I could hear my own heartbeat. Outside. Yeah, wow, I know. This random unmarked road led me to this fence, which, yeah, is the border of Nevada. So, this random barbed wire fence in the actual middle of nowhere is the dividing line of Pacific and Mountain Time. From here, it was straight east to Salt Lake City, where I'd meet up with Nick I mentioned earlier. As I was winding down for the day, I scrolled upon this listing on Facebook. Wouldn't you know, it's the rear axle I need for the MJ. An exceptionally rare thing I've yet to even see listed for sale anywhere, and of course it pops up in eastern Pennsylvania while I'm on the opposite end of the country. I seriously debated driving all the way out there, but I just don't have enough money. So close. Man, it'd be so cool to put a Dana 44 track lock in the XJ too. Next day, I made it to Nick's place, and we hung out for the first time since literally high school. He showed me Costco, which, yes, I've never been to a Costco before, and then this epic gym place that was like a devoted rock climbing building. That was honestly pretty awesome, but after that 1 mile hike back in Oregon, I'm done with physical activity for the rest of the year. But for someone who's into that sort of thing, Utah is where it's at. After Salt Lake, I was on the road south towards Moab. I spotted an in-use 1988 Cherokee Wagoneer and a fully restored Jeepster Commando, among many other cool touristy things. Moab is a pretty cool place. It's like a Jeep oasis in the middle of the Utah desert. My next goal was Monument Valley. For those uncultured, this is where Forrest Gump stopped running. But before I got here, I was distracted yet again by some unmarked service trail. So this area is pretty much Arizona, but I'm still in Utah, so like very southern Utah. And here, once again, you can see how getting out of the vehicle and walking on the ground first is an excellent way to tell if you're going to get stuck. This sand was super powdery and loose, and there is no way I would have been able to get out of there with a two-wheel drive. Definitely saved myself on that one. I also found this cave that was fenced off. I managed to squeeze through a small opening in the fence and get to it because, seriously, nobody's out here. Who's going to stop me? Here's some more cinematic shots of southern Utah, which, I mean, at this point, I have deemed my new favorite state, mostly because nobody lives here. I'm not a people person, okay? And the silence is so peaceful. There's a town called Mexican Hat. Yes, Mexican Hat. It's aptly named after this rock, which is called Mexican Hat Rock. Very nice. But alas, here we are. Monument Valley. It's raining here. I bet that's a pretty rare occurrence. This is a pretty cool place. Wow. I bet I am one of the very few humans to experience rain in Monument Valley. I'm kind of tired. I think I'll go home now. It was beautiful. Even if it wasn't a movie scene, I would have come here regardless. I found another camping area with some old shops left abandoned. There were two hot chicks nearby out here on their own adventure. I asked one of them to take a picture for me, and that's how we get this shot. Some Dutch woman took it. She was from the Netherlands, out here exploring the western US because there's nothing quite like it in Europe. Awesome, man. Fill in those unexplored areas of the map. So I drove through Arizona at night and made it to Gallup, where I slept in the Jeep again. This is a picture of me entering New Mexico, and literally the next thing that happened was me entering Texas. Finally back in the correct time zone. Now, I don't know why, but I always seem to find myself in Amarillo, probably because it's somewhat centrally located. But anyway, I got a room here at the Atria Inn, the very same one we stayed at during Operation Vertigo. I like this motel, highly recommended. It's cheap. It has some damn good showers, and it's in Amarillo, which I always seem to drive through whenever I go out west. From Texas, I went to Texas, more specifically Dallas, where of course I had to get some In-N-Out. Oh, I failed to mention earlier that I stopped at one in Salem, Oregon, but meh, it was not as good as the authentic In-N-Out I remembered. Dallas In-N-Out is where it's at. And that brings me to my favorite burger place, which, plot twist, is no longer In-N-Out because Bryant showed me this place in Portland called Burgerville. And yeah, best burger ever. Unfortunately, they're only in Oregon and Washington, I think. But it tasted like a fresh homemade burger. It was straight out of a fast food kitchen. 10 out of 10. In Mississippi, I spotted a Comanche. This beast over here sitting at a mechanic shop. Instantly, this is an extremely rare model because it's a column shift automatic with four-wheel drive. I noticed the HO badge on the tailgate and the solid Dana 30 up front without a CAD system, and sure enough, the VIN confirms this is a 1992 MJ, one of only 952 trucks built during '92 worldwide. Yeah, that was epic. So I went inside to ask about it. It doesn't run on account of the fuel pump, but they do plan on fixing it up and keeping it on the road. It was a family truck and only has 100,000 miles on it, so hopefully this one can live the rest of its days on the roads. From there, it was just the home stretch, and this is where I accidentally found the back rooms. These pictures were taken on the far western edge of Florida, and this place just felt off. I don't know how else to explain it. It was weird over there, man. I didn't see a single car for hours, and that in itself is weird because I was not at all very far from Mobile or Pensacola. But after a night's rest on Interstate 10, from there, the home stretch went smoothly. I finally updated the map. I've been to 31 states now. I didn't really count Washington because I never actually got out and set foot there. I only drove through it. But the Jeep done made it. 6,000 miles from Wisconsin to Oregon to Florida, and countless places between. What an adventure that was. I spent 17 days total on the road, much shorter than the originally anticipated 22 days. I slept at a friend's place 2 nights, hotels 4 nights, and in the Jeep 10 nights. This saves a lot of money not paying $100 for a mattress, you know? And I mean, really the only reason I needed hotels was for their other amenities like a TV for the blockbuster movies or a shower. I spent $1,042.47 on gas, slightly below my estimated $1,100, partly due to getting really good MPG and gas being pretty cheap in Texas and the Southeast. Averaging about 21 miles per gallon, I burned 315 gallons of gas to drive a grand total of 6,621 miles. I spent $867.65 on everything else, including food, supplies, hotels, and souvenirs. That's an average of only $51.04 a day, and there were some days I didn't spend $1. I was living very lean. I literally only ate bread and peanut butter for most of this trip in an effort to save money, only getting fast food when, I just needed a damn burger. So $1,910.12 in total with 0 mechanical failures. I think that's a pretty damn good deal considering the economy is deep fried and everything costs more than. Now, I was really pushing myself. I guess I definitely could have shaved off maybe $500 or so, but that means no souvenirs, no hotels. It just would have been miserable. Would I recommend driving across the country with only $2,000? No. It was not easy eating bread for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but at the same time, it was not ideal to be driving a thermodynamically inefficient tractor engine in a box. And with your average run-of-the-mill sedan nowadays getting over double this car's MPG, that would cut your gas costs in half. And that's a lot more wiggle room with money. If I drove something with insane hypermiling MPG numbers like a Prius, I could have probably only spent maybe $300 on gas. But I love my Jeep. I ain't going nowhere without it. What other early 2000s car can you buy for $2,000 with over 250,000 miles on it, give a tune-up, and then drive 6,600 miles up mountains, on trails, through deserts, cities, interstates, and everything in between with no issues? The Jeep Cherokee. Resilient. Ubiquitous. Bulletproof.